Sheer Heart Attack, Queen's third studio album, the first album of theirs to reach the top 20 in the US charts. Like we did in the last video, I'm going to take a look at this album, go through each of the songs, rank how good they are, and tell you how good was this album actually. So the opener for this album is Brighton Rock, and it's a high point. It starts off very, very strong. It starts with this parade noise that slowly shifts into like a guitar, and then a second guitar comes in. That whole transition is just done so well. And just like that, you're guided into this awesome rock album with such a strong opening song. I also love some of the early vocal moments on this with Freddie Mercury as he transitions his like falsetto voice into his chest. It's strange to me how much power he comes across. Like when you sing with falsetto, it usually sounds light and airy, and when you sing with your chest, it's powerful. He has this weird blend, and I think it's one of the things that makes him so special, of keeping this power both in the highest registers and then also this light airiness in the lowest registers. It's a perfect marriage. He's a fantastic rock singer, one of the best of all time. And I think this is a really small moment that kind of highlights one of the reasons why. And as the song progresses, it's just so fun. You have so much energy coming out. And from an opening track, that's what I want. I want to be dropped into the album. And whether it's the guitar or the weird, interesting, like back and forth vocals from Freddie Mercury, or the incredible chorus, which is just so strong. And so whether it's this brilliant chorus or this blistering guitar work, I feel like there's a little of something to love for everybody in this track. But one of the things I feel sets Queen apart from the average rock band at the time is I feel like a lesser rock band would have extended all of these ideas and snippets onto an entire side of an album, not just the opening track. And then you get to a bridge that feels just utterly 70s to me. It's so cool. It's this delayed guitar that is soloing by itself and just doing this kind of call and response back and forth to each other, just mimicking what has been played with a delay effect. And I don't know if it's Brian May's tone or his playing or a combination of everything, but it just makes him feel larger than life and takes this one instrument that is alone by itself and makes it feel like it fills up the entire room. So yeah, where are we rating this song? Easily for me in the S category. I think this is, such a fun opener and really gives you everything you want to hear in a Queen song. Next, we have Killer Queen, which is kind of what I imagine is like the archetype for the Queen sound. It's fantastical, yet futuristic. It feels like a court jester in a spaceship. It's just so them. They're also one of the only bands I can think of that can sell me this like opera-infused rock and roll and make it this believable. And between the snapping intro into the high register piano and then Freddie's quite whimsical lyrics, I feel like they're able to go so far out of the bounds of normalcy and rock tendencies and yet still remain an incredible rock band. And I think it's a really huge talent, and I think this song expresses that perfectly. This has some of my favorite melodies on the entire record, and Freddie Mercury does not disappoint in any way. It feels like he's floating along the track, and this voice that you've heard, again, be already so powerful, gets to be powerful, but it also gets to dance around, and it does feel like a dance. It feels fluid, it feels like there's movement, and whereas some rock and roll singers to me feel like their voices are jackhammers, just these powerful things to move mountains, to me, Freddie feels more like a chisel in the hands of an artisan. And I say that, and at the same time, he's singing about dynamite with a laser beam. Like, it's just so funny and so out there, but again, they make it work. This is also a great testament to Queen as a band, because although Freddie Mercury is phenomenal, each one of the members is incredible in their own right and shows it off on this song and on the album in general. Whether it's Freddie's voice, she's a killer queen, got bad agility, Brian May's guitar, Roger Taylor's ability to be a rock drummer and also have the subtlety of a percussionist, or John Deacon able to match energy and push everybody on the bass. Like Marie Antoinette, so where are we putting this song? S tier. It's an S tier song. It's one of my favorites from Queen on this album and just a fantastic song through and through. Now these next three songs, Tenement Funster, Flick of the Wrist, and Lily of the Valley, all go together with each other. They kind of run one from the other to the other. But I'm going to break them up because I feel differently about each one. So Tenement Funster, I think, is a great use of variety on the album. It definitely shows Queen's range. It starts with this moody acoustic guitar being plucked as you get this very delayed and reverbed Roger Taylor voice over the chords. And the lyrics are describing playing rock and roll records and your downstairs neighbors are hearing you rock out and hating you. They say my rock and roll 45's been enraging the people on the lower floor, and I just love that mental image of like one of the founding members of Queen, Roger Taylor, being upstairs spinning records and people below him being mad, like, stop playing all this rock and roll. It's just funny. I like it. And it transitions pretty quickly into this Beatles-esque feeling song, but heavier. It's got this really, really good drive to it. And it's so funny listening to the song because Roger Taylor is a fantastic rock and roll vocalist. Any band would be glad to have him. And had he not been in a band with what some consider to be the greatest rock and roll vocalist of all time, I can imagine him being the main rock singer for all these songs. But it is a treat to hear him here, and I think he does a great job. And while I know a lot of people love this song, and there's certainly nothing wrong with it, it's just not my favorite. I feel like a lot of the other rock-forward tracks in this album just do a bit of a better job at capturing my attention in a more unique way. So I think we're going to put this right here in the good category. Okay, and Flick of the Wrist. This brings back that weirdness and that out there creativity that I love Queen so much for. It starts out with this very inviting piano. It's light, it's airy, it's playful. And then out of nowhere just turns into this sinister rock track. Like, I just love the total 180 turn in direction from this like playful piano into this. Dislocate your spine if you don't sign it. And the song is about con men who they had been around in the music industry, people trying to take advantage of the band, trying to con them in some way, which is the topic of a lot of rock and roll songs, but I think it's done really, really well here. Think of the rest, I literally can't stop smiling. It's just such a fun chorus to listen to. I love the slant rhymes in this, a flick of the wrist, a dig in the ribs. It just makes every aspect of the chorus catchy. While I don't think this is quite S tier for me, it is one of my favorites on the entire record, and it's kind of teetering between great and S, but I'm going to put it here in the great category for now. All this time, honey, baby, you've been And then just like that, a perfect transition into Lily of the Valley. And it starts off as this intimate piano song where, I mean, I really think it's such a good highlight of Freddie's voice. And then you get these beautiful background harmonies, which we've talked about prior, but I just love how they feel like waves to me in this. And it's interesting to me that the first word they come in is the word sea. And then earlier when I compared them to Shakespeare, I mean, there's even a Shakespeare line in the song, My Kingdom for a Horse. And I feel like the inclusion of that Shakespeare line as an homage really kind of ties up my feelings on the song, an artistic piece rather than a catchy one. And Brian May even said something to that effect here, where he says it's a great piece of art, but it's the last song that would ever be a hit. And I'd have to agree. I still feel like it's a fantastic song, though, and a great way to end this like run of 3 on side 1. So where are we going to put it? We're going to put it right here in the great category. Next up is Now I'm Here, and this is another one that feels almost like a Broadway show in the Middle Ages to me. Like, it's over the top. It's using all of these new production tools, especially with its great use of panning, as it does the Now I'm Here, Now I'm There. Rotating Freddie Mercury voice. Also, I've had this album on loop over the past few days, and randomly today I heard somebody say the word wow at 50 seconds of this song specifically. I've looked it up on the internet. I can't find anybody else who's experienced this. If you have, please let me know so I'm not crazy, but I'm going to play it. I'm pretty sure somebody's yelling wow in the background. So, I mean, I'm sure somebody's heard it before me. I just can't find anybody talking about it. I'm just curious if you guys know the story behind it. Either way, the song leaves this semi-psychedelic exploration into production with the circling voice and goes into a more traditional bluesy rock song, which I think it does very well. My favorite line of the song is the down in the city just hoopling me. Down in the city just hoopling me. And I remember hearing that the first time, and I didn't understand it, and it took me forever to click and go, oh, Mott the Hoople, the other band. And sure enough, Queen was on tour with Mott the Hoople at the time, and this was kind of a song about that. So I just love little callbacks like that, because I would have had no idea they were on tour together, and it's just kind of a cool piece of rock history to have. Just a real moment from that time where people in this audience very likely could have seen them on that tour. Just cool. So even though I think this is more of a straight ahead rock song with the cool production stuff at the beginning, the interesting rock history, and then again, all the ear candy, I'm going to put this right here in the great category. And with that, we're officially on to side 2. Also new background. Sun was setting, doing it here now. So this side starts with In the Lap of the Gods, which itself starts with Roger Taylor doing his best impression of a dog whistle. I'm obviously poking fun at him, but it's a ridiculously impressive note. I think it's the highest note on the entire album is on this song. So again, his vocals could stand up with most rock singers at the time. This is another strange one. It feels like an exploration on how to create atmosphere. I mean, the whole beginning of the song to me feels like you're just cast into these stormy waters with wind ripping and you're in this little rickety boat. It's very disorienting, and I think that's what it's meant to do. And when I say the track is disorienting at the beginning, I don't mean it's bad. I mean, genuinely, it feels chaotic. It feels rough. It feels turbulent. You have a lot of voices that are coming up and high parts and low parts and just a lot happening. And I think that's all purposely done because it takes you from this very chaotic place into a second half that just feels so luscious and groovy, and repeating that refrain of "leave it in the lap of the gods." Leave it in the lap of the gods. And to me, it almost feels like, hey, we're going to disorient you. You can't do anything about it. You got to accept it, and then we're going to reward you. And so you get covered in this blanket of sound that I think does so much for the start of the album. You've just heard an entire side one. It's got you used to a certain sound, and I think this really does do a great job at kind of getting you ready and prepared for the second half. So with all that said, I'm going to put this right here in the great category. And I also love that they don't just jolt you out of this warm blanket of a groove that they've put you in. They transition it perfectly into the next song, which to me is a pretty hard ask considering the next song is... Brother. And here we go. I mean, this is my award for my favorite Queen song on this album. This is incredible. It feels so ahead of its time, so heavy. I mean, I'm somebody who, one of my early bands that I loved was Metallica, and I know they've covered this song, but it almost feels like Metallica didn't even need to do much. This is such a good canvas and jumping off point, and again, just feels so forward pushing. It's just a really impressive prototype to what would become thrash metal. I love the vocals in this. Freddie's delivery is manic. It feels aggressive. It's so fast. All of that just complements the guitar and the drums and the bass so well. You just get this energetic, pushing song that I just adore. Plus, again, it still has that Queen charm where you're talking about, water guns and it feels like a mob movie. It's just such a cool picture. And apparently this song was written in like 1970. So it's one of the earlier songs the band had written, and I think Freddie had brought it from a previous band into this one. But it's just so impressive. It's one of those songs that I feel like you need every member. You have such cool bass stuff happening. Roger Taylor's drumming feels like a perfect mix of like punk elements with the groove and then these cool jazzy fills. And then with Brian May's guitar, you just get this well-rounded, very diverse and influenced song that I just feel like has so much replayability. So we're putting this comfortably in the S tier. Again, my favorite song on the entire record. I just can't get enough of it. Next up is a short little one, Dear Friends, and this song feels like a Christmas song in the best possible way. It's tender, it's warm, it's heartfelt, the lyrics are lovely. Freddie's voice again sounds great, and juxtaposed with his piano playing, it's just a really nice treat. Now, it's a short song. It's not the best song on the record. It's not going to be a #1 chart topper, but this is what I look for in like a B-side. It feels intimate, lovely, and it just gives this nice breakup from this very aggressive thing that you just heard into the rest of the album. And while I don't feel like I could rate it higher than good, I'm really, really glad it's here. Next up is Misfire, and this one feels like one of the rare misses from Queen, especially on this album. I just don't feel like it does anything specifically that any of the other previous songs didn't do, and do better for that matter. And even the chorus, which is usually a high point in Queen songs, to me just ends up feeling a little bit like Freddie and the guitar are both fighting for center stage. They're panned left and right, and I don't know, I just feel like they're both trying to vie for attention, and neither one of them really gets it. Also, apparently the song was mainly written by John Deacon, and he played a lot of the guitar on this because I think Brian May was in the hospital at the time for actually a lot of the songs on this record. So I think the guitar playing is mostly not Brian May, which makes sense because it's not bad by any means. It just doesn't have that like Brian May wow factor that I miss so often. So yeah, overall, not a bad song, just kind of middling, average. So we're going to put this right here in the meh category. I say all of that, but then I'm about to gush over this weird one here. Bring Back That Leroy Brown. Bet your bottom dollar bill you're a playboy. I can easily see this being somebody's least favorite song on the record, but I really enjoy it. It's this kind of vaudeville-esque barbershop quartet style of a song. This jangly ukulele in the back, and like all of these sound like weird, disparate elements that I would not have imagined would work in a Queen song, but they just somehow do. The song is just so absurd, but yet it's sung with this gusto and like rock and roll confidence that besides the Beatles, I really can't think of another band at this time period that I feel like could do this song justice and make it not feel cringy at all. This is also a high point for the rhythm section, in my opinion. The song is like deceptively difficult, especially on the drums. There's a lot of really precise kick and snare work that is done so well that you don't even notice it. I'm gonna bring that Leroy Brown. Bet your bottom dollar bill you're a playboy. It's a lot more complicated than I think people would give it credit for without actually listening to it for that reason. Put a shotgun to his head. And while I will not be explaining why I love that part so much, dude, I just do. So where are we putting this? For me, this might be the most controversial one on the album, but I'm going to put it in the great category. Again, I can see somebody being like, this is like my least favorite song on the album, but man, it's funky, it's weird, it's Queen, I dig it. Next up is She Makes Me, Stormtrooper and Stilettos, which, very difficult title, also very cool title. This is a complicated one. I'm reminded a bit of the quote, Rose by any other name is just as sweet. And while I've tended to agree with that sentiment in general, I feel like I would love this song a lot more than I do if it wasn't a Queen song. Because standing on its own, I really do enjoy the song. It brings this swirling atmosphere, almost psychedelic in nature. She is my all. And I had to listen to this a few times to really give it its proper due, because the first few times I heard it, it just felt like filler to me. And I think what changed my mind on this is I had this in a playlist and it popped up randomly. And I didn't realize I was even listening to it for the first 2.5 minutes. And I caught myself at the end of it realizing it was a Queen song and realizing maybe it was my perception of that changed my enjoyment of it on the record. And so I say all that to say, I think if I had heard this from just a random band or a bar band or a random track we'd hit on this channel, I think I might have enjoyed it more. So then it leaves us to the question of the rating. I really can't divorce my idea of a Queen song from this on the record. And as much as I can enjoy it and maybe be sucked into it, if I'm not paying attention to that, if I'm listening to this record all the way through, I do feel like it falls a little out of place. So we're going to put this right here in the meh category. All right, we're at the last song of the record, In the Lap of the Gods, Revisited. I remember when Andy and I listened to this for the first time, there was like some familiarity to it that I'd already had, and I couldn't quite place it at the time. I thought, well, I've just heard a bunch of Queen, so that's probably why I feel that way. But it wasn't until revisiting this revisited song that I realized how similar this felt like to We Are the Champions. Specifically, this part here. And so in some ways, it feels almost like a prototype to that song, which is not a bad thing. That song is a fantastic song, but it feels like that would be a more perfected version of what this is. But regardless of that, I still think the song sounds like a stadium anthem. I mean, this ooh la 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 part that you kind of end on, it feels like a stadium could sing it, and it would be no more loud than it is in this track. And it's one of the times on the record, besides Stone Cold Crazy, that I was like, man, what I would give to like be at a concert at this album to hear some of these songs, and especially this one, I feel like would just be such a treat live. So yeah, I mean, anthemic, enjoyable. It still gives me that feeling of a prototype a bit, and I do think they perfect this sound later on in their career. So for that reason, I'm going to put it in the good category. But I could easily see this being somebody's great. You know, it's up to interpretation, obviously. All music is. But I do think it's a great way to end the album. I mean, it makes it end with a bang. And in fact, even the song literally ends with a bang. So that's it. Every song from Sheer Heart Attack ranked. How good was it? I mean, it's fantastic. It feels like Queen coming into their sound. You hear so many elements that are later going to be perfected or drawn from on this album that I think flush out so much of their later career. And so to hear all that on one album in a raw form, I think is just incredible. There's a lot of diversity, a lot of great musicianship, and they do things on this that are some of my favorite Queen work of all time. So that's it. Thank you guys for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, feel free to subscribe, hit the notification bell. Also, leave me some comments if you want to see me do this for another album we've hit. Happy to do it. But I really, really enjoy these kind of breakdown and analysis videos. It gives me a good reason to go back and enjoy an album that we've heard in the past. So thank you very much. We'll catch you next video. Bye.
All right, guys, thanks so much for watching. If you had a good time watching that video, go and upvote the video, subscribe if you're not already. Check out some other videos here on the YouTube or on the Patreon if you want extra juicy stuff you can't get on YouTube, because